And welcome to Excelsior Capital Partners, the Rising Series podcast. With me this morning is Rick MacPherson, CEO of Birchtech, which is BCHT, ticker symbol. We've had Rick on the Rising podcast once before, and if I remember correctly, the last thing we said, or Rick said to me, we should do this again in a few months. The first one was April. It's now October. To follow up and see how things are going. So to that end, yesterday, which was October 6th, Birchtech put out a press release that I thought was very interesting and talking about developments in the water business. So with that long intro, I just wanted to turn it over to Rick and sort of catch us up on where we are on water, and then secondarily on the process of in the emissions control business, really getting those monies that have been adjudicated or partially adjudicated onto the balance sheet and reinvesting them into capital returning projects. So sorry, very long intro, but great to have you, Rick, and please take it away.
Well, thank you, James. Yes, pleasure to be back with you. And a lot's happened since we last spoke in the spring. In particular in the water business, but also on the air side. And you mentioned the press release that we put out yesterday. You know, that basically introduced us to the investment community as a commercialized water treatment company.
Sure.
We've been working in a number of different areas, but one that we never really spoke much about was that we were actually selling products into the water treatment business other than granular activated carbon or powdered activated carbon. And these ion resins and such are just part of a full line of materials that we are now selling into the water market. The initial sale of in excess of 900,000 was what we would expect to be a typical situation for us going forward for our general water treatment business, which we expect will expand nicely in 2026. And I look forward to giving some hard guidance on that in the coming weeks. But backing up to the spring and where we were then and where we are now, you know, what's really taken off is our analytical labs in North Dakota and our design center in Pennsylvania. Both of those facilities are incredibly busy at this time, both with in-house work that we're doing, developing new technologies for the water business. And we have some provisional patents in place now covering most of what it is that we've been developing, but also the work that we're now doing as part of our outreach program to utilities and engineering firms across the country to use our facilities in order to be able to figure out, you know, how they could best approach the PFOS regulations that are coming.
Sure, and that's I think there's a lot to unpack there, but going back to yesterday's press release on the water treatment, it mentioned being media agnostic, and is that, and I think also from what you just said, are you offering solutions that are not using carbon filtration or charcoal, or I'm a layman, obviously, but
yes,
maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
So our experience over the last decade and more in working in the power plant environment have exposed us to different power plant situations, of course, where they have to treat the water that's used, that they use for cooling and steam production and things of that nature in the general operation of the power plant. So we've been able to broaden our offerings in that field into the water treatment side as well. And this first notice of commercial activity is aimed at that. So not only in the water utility industry with regards to potable water and remediation of wastewaters, we're also actively working in the power plant industry, which we've been in for over a decade. And that contract was the initial of what we expect to be many more to come down the road. So overall, we've coined it a water treatment operation rather than a GAC or reactivation or PAC product line. So we've developed a larger water division within the company, which involves the analytical the design center work that we're doing for development work and reactivation, and then a full cross-section of products that we are offering through chemical companies that we've built relationships with over the years.
Okay.
Both the power plant industry and the water remediation industry, as well as potable water. So we've backed up over the last year and taken a very wide swath at the water industry as a whole. And you'll start to see that the fruition of that come forward in not only this week's press release, but we expect many more to come.
That's exciting. And in terms of, again, as a layman, the water that you might have to, or would be produced in power generation, and then recycled and probably used again at or near that plant versus the water that goes into a drinking supply, is how different is the technology there, or are you having to sell very different solutions for that, or is water water?
Yeah, no, actually, there is quite a cross section of chemicals that are used and processes that are used for varying different stages of the water treatment that we're involved in, both at power plants and in just wastewater remediation itself. I couldn't get into it here at this time, but what we've been able to do is set ourselves up as a company by testing the best of the products that were available out there, and then operating as a reseller. And we'll probably rebrand some of these as we go forward to our own name. Most of the chemicals that are sold in the industry that are branded products are actually, made by a chemical company and then sold by another firm. So we're entering that business flat out, and we expect to be successful in it. As that first contract would show, there's reasonable value in those contracts, great profit margins.
Sure.
Have the expertise to be able to work in those fields, both from a business relationship point of view and from a technical point of view, given the engineers and technicians that we have on staff.
Yeah, and I think that your press release, if I remember correctly, noted a mid-Atlantic utility as the counterparty. It would seem that I'm not going to go through other ticker symbols other than BCHT, but my firm, Excelsior Capital Partners, we own several that are in the power gen for data centers business, if you want to call it that, kind of old technology dirty. And they should probably be working with you. So I'll work on that after this call. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of the, if I don't get at least 10 data center power questions per day, it's a slow day.
Yeah, no, it's a very hot topic these days. And, our role in it, of course, is just to try to make them run as efficiently as possible with as low an environmental footprint as possible. And we've been developing some products that we think are going to be exceptional in the field going forward. And again, I'll leave those for future press releases, but we're very excited about the progress we've made in the field. And we think it'll round out our approach and our entry into the water market nicely.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting end market. And if you could, you mentioned patents. So is there a way to briefly go through what your current patent suite is? And obviously, I know the patent process, a lot of the value add is in the application before it's granted. So where do you stand now in terms of, IP, broadly speaking?
So in general, having learned my lessons over the last 10 years, painful on the patent side, we have a very broad but tightly focused patent group of patent applications. And I would basically just leave it at that at this point, James. But what we're doing is creating new approaches and new products for water remediation in general and PFOS capture in particular. And as these become fully vetted and recognized, then we'll bring them to market for information purposes. But at this point, we basically just keep a lid on it and keep doing what we're doing, and make sure that we don't have any infringement problems down the road.
And in terms of the infringement that has already occurred, obviously that's been adjudicated, so that's not an opinion. How far are you down that road? I mean, are there still quite a few pending cases, or does it work in sort of a precedent basis where I know you've won several, so then that means that the remaining ones are sort of easy wins?
Well, it's interesting. Since we last spoke in April, we've settled 6 more cases, and we've been announcing them as we go. And there are still a number outstanding, which we feel will settle out as well in the coming weeks. The major case, which was taken to federal court in Delaware about a year and a half ago, has also had some recent activity from the court. And the judge has put out 2 very significant opinion papers, basically denying or dismissing any and all claims of the defendants as far as follow-on claims to the trial. So we're waiting and hoping to get the final judgment at any time now, and then that would basically finalize that part of the process. And we do expect that there is a potential for them to file an appeal.
Okay.
But we feel extremely confident, given the opinions that have come down from the court, of our position with regards to any appeal. So we're just waiting on the final judgment. What the judge determines to be a fair settlement, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the conversations that I've had with investors about Birchtech, they might or have put that as kind of a low-cost source of capital.
Yes.
But I'm used to dealing with smaller emerging growth companies where capital costs can be quite high, and then you might have, if you did equity, you might have warrants, you might have things like that that are not great. So it would seem in your case, and I'm just wondering if you perceive it this way and your board, that this is in fact an extremely low cost source of capital, that these funds that eventually, I honestly understand the U.S. legal process is quite slow, but these funds that eventually will be released to Birchtech.
Yes, and we have a small percentage that goes to our attorneys.
Of course,
that money is funded and collected, but the rest of that capital would go directly to the company without any attachments. We did not leverage our lawsuit in any way with any investor or bank or insurance company or any of that stuff. So it's all 100% for the shareholders.
Sure. And then in concert with the board, where do you put that? I mean, I won't pin you into actual numbers, but
yeah. So the consensus at this point is to continue to build the water business, which is showing great promise and great revenues, which we expect to be able to start reporting on in more detail as we go through both this month and into next. And so we don't see a huge need for capital. As we go forward, the next 6 months will continue to be development, permitting, environmental engineering efforts, things of that nature, not a lot of CapEx. And our approach going forward has a number of different aspects to it to, if not reduce, almost eliminate the CapEx requirements for us to grow into the space. And I'll be bringing more details on that as we go through and give guidance for 26. So feel very good about where we are, where we're going. The developments that we've made so far are excellent, and I think 26 is going to be a great year for us as we push further into the water business.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's a tremendous opportunity. And maybe you can talk about also outside the US as, someone who spends like almost half my time in Brazil, as the people who listen to this podcast have heard me yammer on about. Obviously, clean drinking water is a big problem there, and so many other places. So in terms of Birchtech and your focus, how much time do you spend domestically and internationally, and where do you see the opportunities?
So the opportunity is right here at home.
Okay.
We're going to stay focused on the US. It is where the future opportunities are. They're rather immediate and they're huge. It's our base, so we'll stay in our lane and push forward in the US. If there are any licensing opportunities overseas, we look at that. We do have one major overseas company that we're now working on, developing a product line for them. We're very close to having that completed for review. So there's a strong chance that we'll be talking about some product development in a joint venture sense with a large multinational in the coming weeks as well.
Sure. And I think that in the conversations I've had with people about Birchtech, I mean, the investors will always position your company for you, even if you don't ask them to, but they generally would like to perceive Birchtech as an IP company and maybe asset light. Is that the way you're looking at it?
And so our strength is as a tech company, although we're good operators, we really are a tech company. And so creating disruptive technologies that tackle regulations in particular is our forte, and that's what we'll continue doing. We reduce the cost of mercury capture in the power plant business for those units that use a sorbent type approach drastically. And I'm not suggesting we can reduce the water cost drastically, but I think we can make a very significant improvement in the options that are available to utilities across the country.
Okay, great. And in terms of the financials, the agreement that you announced yesterday was, I guess, somewhat small, you might call it, in the $900,000 range contract value. How would you expect that to sort of scale?
Sure.
So you get a bunch of those, or you get a couple big ones, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's fairly typical of the contract size that we expect. That particular client will probably need that order of contract probably twice a year. And that's not atypical of the size of the clients that we're going to be dealing with. We have a number of people in the pipeline now. So as I mentioned earlier, James, I'll be giving some guidance on that in the coming weeks. And significant business with great margins. So we're very much looking forward to adding that into our overall story as we go forward. And that doesn't even touch on our granular activated carbon sales that we're going to be able to project as well. And in particular, what's becoming a profit source for us going forward is the actual analytical center and design center. So as we continue to offer those services across the board, we're getting some very keen interest in us working with utilities to help them find the best possible approach to the PFAS regulations.
And can you give us, I know Rick has a hard stop here in about 10 minutes, but can you give us sort of a 30,000 foot view of the state of PFOA and PFAS regulations? And obviously with, we're in what, again, perception, but everyone perceives as this incredibly laissez-faire, business first, do whatever you want environment, which I realize is not the case, but stock market thinks that. So, where do we sit on those regulations, and how has that changed since
Sure.
January?
Yeah, since we last spoke, the Trump administration moved the deadlines for compliance
Okay.
out 2 years. And it looks like the requirement to maintain a level, the regulation level will be 4 PPT.
Okay.
So that's still a very challenging task for most of the utilities in the country. But what we're seeing as well is not only have half of the states in the country said they're going to go ahead and adopt and put their own regulations in sooner, either similar to the previous EPA guidelines or even sooner than that.
Okay.
We do expect that there will be a significant number of utilities across the country collecting PFOS, starting in as early as 2026, but really coming on stride in 2027 and beyond. And it's going to have a huge impact on the requirements for GAC in particular, but also have a very significant impact on our operations, both in the research and analytical side, as well as on our sell-through of the feedstock contract that we announced about a year ago, and the continuing growth at our design center of our reactivation services. So we expect a significant ramp up in 26 in that front, along with the overall water treatment business that we've spoke about earlier. And as well with the settlements that we're having on the air side, we are also positioning ourselves for supply side contracts with those. So we do expect our air business, once their present contracts are up, to start to benefit from that process as well.
And those would be power plants, basically?
Power plants, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have some phone calls to make after this one because at Excelsior Capital Partners, we own a lot of, we have a lot of exposure to power plants. And they're doing well, by the way, but
yeah. And I think they'll do better.
I agree.
There's a lot of demand out there. So I see that industry as, at the very least, maintaining its present position, if not expanding in the coming year, 2-3 years.
Sure. And in terms of just monetizing, you mentioned the facilities you have, North Dakota, Pennsylvania. What do you see as the sort of ideal mix of in-house work for contracts that you're fulfilling, like the one you just announced yesterday, and sort of third-party, purely
So,
IP work?
yeah, so what's happening now, James, is we've been in development mode using our facilities about 90% of the time,
Okay.
up until now. Now that our development side is starting to take shape and move on into the application of those developments, we'll be bringing more commercial work into the labs, which is, paid for business. And that will be set up basically to first and foremost help people figure out what they can do to meet the PFOS regulations. And then secondly, what we can do as part of that solution to help them meet their requirements over the long term. So,
Okay.
And we get paid for those services as well. So it's both a paid for analytical service and a way for us to open the door and show our strengths, skill set, and what we can do to work with them long term, either through providing GAC or reactivation services or things of that nature. We still have our intent to move forward, and we should be announcing in the next month. But we're just waiting on the permit side of things. Where and what we'll be building for our first reactivation center. And we're just finalizing the details on that, waiting for the permitting process to conclude before we make any announcements.
Okay. And so a reactivation center, that's kind of a one-stop shop for filtration. How would that work?
It's a significant plant that we have designed. Okay. That our people in-house have the skill set to design, operate, build and operate. And we have selected a number of different sites in the country and applied for permits to build. And so we are now in the process of making final selection on where we're going to place that plant.
Interesting.
We've been working with a number of different utilities in terms of putting offtake agreements in place, more or less. If we build it, will you use it type of situation.
Right,
So
right.
we're really, really pleased with that whole process, to the point where I expect by the end of this month, first part of November, we'll be able to make a full announcement as to what our exact plans are there.
Oh, that would be great. I mean, I think that one of the things, back to my old days on the sell side, is that we always look for identifiable near-term catalysts for a stock. Your stock, I'm not telling you something you don't know, has actually done quite well this year. Year to date, up more than 30% the last time I checked, which was yesterday. And I know that one of your goals is to have broader exposure to the capital markets, more sponsorship. So in terms of where you're listed and where you'd like to be listed, where do we stand in that process?
Sure. So if you may have noticed, James, that Lake Street picked up coverage on us.
All right. Yeah.
Excellent institutional bank. We're also working with a couple of other companies right now on coverage. Janney, for example, and AC Wainwright. I think once the messages are gotten out from these very respected firms, then people will start to understand what our long-term story is. We are looking forward to making a move onto the New York Stock Exchange this fall.
Okay, great.
The timing was expected to be somewhere around end of October up to mid of November. The shutdown may cause a little bit of delay in that.
Okay.
But with the SEC not functioning full bore, but moving ahead, full steam ahead to see if we can't get that uplisting in place in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing to have that suite of catalysts plus the uplist all done in 4Q25.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be nice holidays. So
yeah, that's what we're shooting for.
Awesome. That's great. And as I said, Rick does have a hard stop here, which we're right up against. So let me just say thank you, Rick MacPherson, CEO of Birchtech. BCHT is the ticker symbol. Love having you on. Please come back again. It's nice to follow up, and nice to see that you're having so much success.
My pleasure, James. Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.